926 We get enough Thursday. We have enough jurisdictions. All right. Good evening, everybody.
Okay.
Though we are few, we are quorum, it would appear. Thank you all for being here. I'll note that the meeting is starting at 7:06. My name is Sarah Bagley. I'm the chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. David Snyder has requested electronic participation. Did we see? Yeah, I see that he is online. He's on business on travel out of the country, so we need a motion to approve Mr. Snyder's participation remotely.
So moves. Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. DeFerrante, Mr. Alcorn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, welcome, Mr. Snyder, to the meeting. Raise your hand if you need
Thank
to.
you. Thanks very much.
All right, tonight, we are saying goodbye, actually. We're starting our meeting with some goodbyes to two commissioners, former Senator Adam Ebbin, who has joined us here this evening. Thank you so much. And I don't believe we have former DRPT Director Tiffany Robinson, but we'll acknowledge her service. We are also welcoming a new alternate from the Commonwealth, who many of you will recognize, who has simply moved chairs here. Our former Director of Programs and Policy, Alan Fye. DRPT Director Maria Zimmerman has also been named a Commonwealth alternate, and we will see her at our next meeting. This meeting will include our first overview of projects being considered for the I-66 Commuter Choice Program, which the public comment period opened yesterday. So feel free to comment away. We will also have reports on activities at WMATA, as well as an update on what's been happening at the General Assembly. Later in the meeting, we will formally welcome Katie Cho, who is here tonight with us. She is VRE's new CEO, and later in the agenda, you'll be asked to take on 6 action items related to VRE, including 2 grant applications and 4 BPRA agreements. Finally, as part of the Executive Director's Report, we have the Quarterly Communication Metrics Report, which reports on our public engagement activities. Kate, any public comments this month?
Madam Chair, indeed, we had 65 public comments. I do believe that may be a record. 64 of them have asked that NVTC request the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation study the feasibility of a rail with trail line from East Falls Church Metro to Percival along the W&OD trail right away. One of the public comments was against that corridor, given the existence of the Metro Silver Line. So all of these comments were provided to commissioners in advance of the meeting.
All right, any questions or further comments on the comments?
I was just curious, is this something that has been discussed before or come up in an NVTC meeting at all?
So, well, Madam Chair, in fact, in 1965, NVTC did a study as a part of getting when the efforts in starting Metro Rail. That was one of the studies, and it is cited on a website.
Okay, so all the way back in
Yes.
1965. Okay,
Yes.
but it hasn't been discussed since. Is it something that is even on the table to do a study, or is even feasible, or it's like I don't know how like things come to fruition?
So we have not examined that, and I would expect that probably the regional planners. I have not done the entire history. These just came in at 3 o'clock this afternoon. But NVTC had studied along the way, then was decided obviously the Metro Rail and then later the VRE. And so my sense is the land is, or the W&OD is a Nova Parks Authority. So they would probably be the best ones to know sort of the history and story of what's going on along that corridor.
I would encourage you to reach out to the Executive Director of Nova Parks.
Yes. Well, thank you.
To learn more.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are going to move on to the oath of office for some new commissioners. I'd like to formally welcome City of Falls Church Council Member Justine Underhill, who is now the city's Principal Commissioner on NVTC. David Snyder will continue as an alternate and still serve in his role as immediate past chair. Since Justine is moving from an alternate to the Principal Commissioner spot, we don't need to swear her in, but I did want to announce her appointment.
Thank you.
Welcome. We have 2 new alternate commissioners to announce. Secretary of Transportation Nick Donahue has appointed DRPT Director Maria Zimmerman and DRPT Deputy Director Alan Fye to serve as alternates on NVTC representing the Commonwealth. Director Zimmerman can't be here with us tonight as she is at the PRTC meeting, but we do have Alan Fye here with us. He's a familiar face, as I mentioned. He was on NVTC staff from 2018 to 2024. serving as Director of Programs and Policy. Welcome back, Alan. And if you could, please join me up front for the oath.
Here we are.
Okay, yeah, okay. Are you ready? All right. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and that I will faithfully discharge all the duties incumbent upon me
that I will faithfully discharge all the duties incumbent upon me
as a member of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission,
and where the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Alan, welcome back. I know you spoke to us from this seat, but
Yes.
if you'd like to add any comment today.
Well, thank you very much. Looking forward to working with everybody. It's nice to be back here. A lot of familiar faces back on the East Coast. A lot of really important challenges we've been working through. And I think going forward for the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for DRPT to work alongside all of you and with MVTC to make sure that transit in Northern Virginia and the rest of the Commonwealth continues to thrive. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening.
Thank you so much. All right, we are also, as I mentioned, recognizing two commissioners who are departing NVTC. And we first have a resolution of commendation for Senator Adam Evan. I think we've got some slides. I'll let Tenley take a moment to bring those up. And okay, so we have an action to approve that resolution, and I wanted to read and share some highlights from the resolution. In January 2026, Senator Evan announced his intent to resign his Senate seat effective February 16th to join Abigail Spanberger's administration and take up a position as senior advisor with the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. Senator Evans served as a member of the General Assembly for 22 years, most recently serving as a member of the Virginia Senate since January 2012, representing Alexandria and portions of Arlington and Fairfax County. Prior to that, he served 8 years in the House of Delegates from 2004 to 2012. Senator Evans served as the chair of the Northern Virginia Growing Needs of Public Transit Joint Subcommittee, otherwise known as SJ28, advocating for sustainable funding, cost containment measures, and strategies to move the region forward towards a more integrated, seamless transit network. Before we open the floor for additional comments, could I have a motion to approve the resolution of commendation for the Honorable Adam P. Evan on his departure from NVTC?
So moved.
All right, I'm gonna give this one to Mr. Stork. Thank you for the motion, and Ms. Coffey here has the second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Alcorn.
So, you know, it's a loss, frankly, Senator Evan, to see you move up and on and outside of this organization, but your leadership on the SJ28 was phenomenal, fantastic, really provided the technical baseline that we needed to keep transit and make transit sustainable financially in Northern Virginia and as part of the larger regional effort. So, you know, you've contributed a lot, and all I could say is, you know, we still have a lot of work to do, but you did so much to lay the foundation on which hopefully we can get the ball over the line. So thank you.
Mr. DeBronte.
Sure, I wasn't timely on social media or in getting 900 likes, but Senator Evan, you've been a leader and mentor, and the way you carry yourself and your intellectual strength, without needing to tell everybody every one of your ideas immediately, it's just been inspiring. So I think if you look over the course of your career, it's an extraordinary career that you stack up there with anyone who's served in the last 40, 50 years from my perspective. So just a huge thank you for all you've done.
Mr. Grant.
The second, third, and so forth, everything that was already said. There are two things that I really appreciated and I will really miss. Number one, you are a major translator and transfer person of what Northern Virginia is to the rest of the state. You explained a lot. You made these relationships to keep them going. And I know that in so many things, including in the issue that you are now an essential part of the administration, you have been a leader that has really brought this Commonwealth together and made Northern Virginia count in many instances in your career. The second thing I'm particularly grateful for is that you did a lot for my jurisdiction, Arlington, which until very recently you have been still representing. You're part of our delegation. And in particular, my sub area in Arlington, which is South Arlington. So thank you very much for that. We found ourselves being very well represented. What you did for Northern Virginia and Richmond, you did for South Arlington and for North Alexandria in this region, and then also in. So thank you very much for that. And SJ28 is an amazing effort. I mean, for this organization here, this was a place where enormous thought leadership was generated, policy leadership was generated, and will endure further on. There are a lot of people who will be trying to be in your shoes, and that's a good thing. They will be difficult to fill well. So thank you.
I would absolutely associate myself with all the comments that have been made so far and maybe add a couple more. Virginia has come a long way, but it came a long way in terms of equal rights for all and respect for all people, because a critical part of that was your leadership throughout. And I know the times that we have, you can never be sure that they won't come back. Part of what you've done is to ensure the difficulty of bringing those times back is immeasurably higher. The threshold and the challenge will be immeasurably higher. So that's huge. And I know particularly the comments too on marijuana and treating people, you know, more evenly and fairly, if you will, because of their use of substances of their choice that don't have any measurable impact for all of us is, I think, a huge part of it. So two major areas that you have been a substantial, maybe a key leader, obviously, where would be the transportation issues that we've talked about, and those are equally important. And then finally, from my perspective, working with you for now 2 decades, when I was on the school board and delegate as well as senator, and you're serving parts of Mount Vernon district throughout that process, and our interactions and our work on so many issues as a result of that. So you will absolutely be missed. And when I heard it, I went, oh, it was one of those things like, oh, okay, well, we need you lots of places, and this is an opportunity I know for you as well. And I really encourage you to take it to the limit and make the differences that you made for all of us at a new place in a new way, which we also need, because we've been stalled on, you know, cannabis and all that for way too long. So thank you.
Mr. Wolf.
Adam, you've done so many things for so many people through your service to the Commonwealth of Virginia, service to getting other people elected. You have mentored, you have supported, you have encouraged. You've left your imprint on so many things. It would take all night to say all the ways in which you've impacted the arc of history in Virginia, including everything that you did for Equality Virginia in your term. But I also believe that there's a season for everything. And I'm very excited for you to have a different season, because I think everybody deserves to reinvent themselves and to do new things. And for everything that you brought in your role in the Senate, you are going to do great things in this new role too. And we are very fortunate that you were selected to be the inaugural person to study or to lead or to create policy around this very important thing that will impact this Commonwealth well into the future. So I'm very proud of you. I'm proud to be a colleague. I'm proud to be your friend. And I am not going to lose track of you. None of us are going to lose track of you. We just won't see you maybe as often.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's funny, I had a little side list of things I wanted to make sure were mentioned. And so, kudos to everybody for sort of ticking off most of them. I just want to add two small things. One is, I think, the work that you did, you built a bench. I think Alexandria continues to be really well represented by Senator Elizabeth Bennett Parker and Delegate McPike. And I know the role you played in fostering both of them and mentoring both of them. And so I'm very grateful that in your leaving, you also sort of left us well represented by people who have benefited from working with you and those relationships with you. So that's very meaningful. I was just sharing before the meeting started that I was talking to Delegate McPike about transit issues and how ready to go he was. And I know that's a credit to the relationship that the two of you have had for years. So thank you so much for that and for the sangria. I think it just has to be said. We all can thank the senator for our right to drink sangria in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Not hearing any further discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the resolution is unanimously adopted, and I love to present you with those. Yeah.
Okay.
A little photo, yeah.
Why did I?
Okay. Do you want to hold? How fast? Yeah.
Sure, she's.
That looks so great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Can I
much.
say something?
Yeah, no, please, yeah.
I was just reflecting, I've been on lots of different committees in the General Assembly, and usually when you're a freshman in the General Assembly, they assign you the committees that you're hoping to get off of and get onto other ones. And I was on the Transportation Committee in the House of Delegates, which was not as glamorous as it seems. It's more approving license plates than allocating funds for transit. But I had the honor of carrying a bill with Senator Whipple about 10 or 15 a while ago, maybe it was 20 years ago, that allowed for the match for Virginia to put in it totaled up to $3 billion between the federal government, Maryland, DC, and Virginia in enacting the policy that we needed to do, the federal government allowed us to do, to put money into Metro. And I was also thinking, though, that when I started, we didn't have the BRT being planned in Mount Vernon. We didn't have the BRT on Route 1 in Alexandria. We didn't have the Silver Line to Dulles with all the argument about over or under that we had in the General Assembly. And we didn't have Long Bridge planned to be doubled in capacity, which was originally built during the Theodore Roosevelt administration. And now all these things are so great. I'm looking forward to taking Amtrak up and using with more trains because of Long Bridge in future years. And all the great things that this commission has done. It means a lot because this is one of the best run organizations, and all the work we did on SJ 28, though it didn't pass in the form that we wanted this year. I think that we did, as was said, laid the groundwork for future legislators to bring home a more sustainable long-term funding operation for transit. So thank you for all that you did to be part of all those projects. Thank you.
Thank you. All right,
Let's go early though.
with that, so next week, we also have a resolution which I'd like us to pass tonight. Ms. Robinson couldn't join us, commendation on her departure from the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. Ms. Robinson served as the director of DRPT for just over the last year of Secretary Miller's tenure. Highlights from that time are in November 2024, Governor Youngkin appointed Ms. Robinson as the director of DRPT. She served as a member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board and chaired the board of directors of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. While her tenure was short, she played an important role leading DRPT's efforts to serve all Virginians with high quality and innovative transportation solutions. Could I have a motion to approve the resolution of commendation for Tiffany Robinson on her departure from MVTC?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you, Ms. Robinson, and we'll make sure that she gets those. Okay, moving right along, we have the minutes of the January 8th meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the January 8th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carantonis. Any further discussion of the meeting minutes? All right, all those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Note the abstention. With that, the motion passes. Finally, I'd like to approve the consent agenda for tonight's meeting. Could I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Bierman. A second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the consent agenda? All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Any opposed? Oh, any opposed? Any abstentions?
Same.
All right, with the one abstention, the
Chair.
consent agenda is approved. Yes, sir.
Mrs. Snyder is also.
He is an attending member, but not a voting member this
Okay.
evening, but thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, with that, the motion and the four consent agenda items are passed. Moving to WMATA. We have WMATA board member Walter Arporn is here to give the WMATA report. Mr. Flowers is unable to attend this evening. I will hand it over to Mr. Arporn.
All right, thank you very much, Chair Bagley. Just a few updates. First, budget, the WMATA FY 2027 budget process continues. Several weeks ago, a detailed operating budget and capital improvement program were released. And the public comment period ended on February 10th. So we now are in the process of deliberation and we're at Metro Board. We continue to monitor legislative activities that could impact Metro's financial position and we'll work with our colleagues, others on the board to ensure we're in good shape prior to budget adoption. And we're looking at probably going to be April when we do that. So we have also another update, comprehensive report in your materials. Encourage everybody to take a look. A few highlights. First of all, our safety numbers at WMATA continue to demonstrate some really good news and a real commitment to safety for our riders and employees. Serious crime is down by 35% year over year. And now Metro is again an industry leader across many of the bus, rail, and access safety categories. There's some good stats in the materials and good news there. The board also received updates on Metro's key performance indicators. And in general, we're moving in the right direction on a number of areas, including ridership, customer satisfaction, and on-time performance. One area that's getting a lot of attention is hiring of bus operators. I've actually been to 3 of the last 4 graduation ceremonies, and there's real progress being made there. I know this is an issue that affects many of our local bus systems as well. But we have made some real progress and hoping actually by the end of the year to almost catch up in terms of filling those vacancies for bus operators. And then finally, I want to highlight a new initiative we're calling the Service Design and Management Program. First identified in our recently updated strategic transformation plan. This program charts a course toward improving scheduling and planning, advancing new operational strategies, and working with regional partners to advance work on the bus priority corridors from DMV moves. Very much consistent with the overall DMV moves efforts to really focus on making the system we have better and financially sustainable. So important stuff there. And again, I want to encourage commissioners to review the written materials for more detail, including the ongoing work at the new Crystal City Station entrance, which is moving along on schedule, which is good news as always. So that's my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chair Alcorn?
We should say also on budget because of the way this is delivered with the partner, construction partner there who included that in a bigger project. So this is a first and that magnitude for us. And I think it's a good experience so far.
Very good.
Okay, with that, we're gonna move over to the chair of the WMATA committee. Committee Chair Matt DeBronte will give us the activities this month.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With our previously scheduled February 19th committee meeting was canceled, we report this evening. Just heard from Mr. Alcorn about Metro's proposed budget. We submitted comments on Metro's FY 27 budget by their February 10th deadline, and a copy of that letter is included in your materials. Looking ahead, our next WMATA committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 16th, when we have invited Inspector General Michelle Zamarin to provide an update on her important work. As a reminder, the WMATA Inspector General reports to the WMATA Board and is charged with promoting efficiency and effectiveness in the organization's activities, namely by conducting and supervising audits, program evaluations, and investigations. We have a fantastic opportunity to leverage each other's efforts as we at NVTC continue to identify ways to reduce costs and improve operational efficiencies at Metro. The way we document those strategies in our annual report on the performance condition of WMATA, our statutorily required report to the General Assembly and the Governor, which will also be on the agenda for April 16th. All commissioners are invited to participate in our committee meetings. April 16th meeting will be upstairs in NVTC's offices at 6 o'clock. That's fine.
All right, any questions for the WMATA committee chair? With that, we'll keep right on rolling then to the Legislative and Policy Committee.
Sure, can I just say, I think that may have been the shortest WMATA.
Jinx said, just keep going. So well done, gentlemen.
Objection.
Yeah.
Keep going.
With that, we'll move to the Legislative and Policy Committee. The committee chair, Kana Gagere, can't be here tonight, but we do have the Legislative and Policy Committee Vice Chair, Jimmy Bierman, to give an update on the legislative session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since it's all in the budget, we don't know what's gonna happen. No, I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke. A lot has happened in Richmond since the commission and the Legislative Policy Committee met last January. The two legislative packages that identified solutions to our transit needs, HB 900 and SB 730, and the HB 1179 and SB 638, which were affectionately known as the Eben and the Sickles bills, were carried over to 2027, meaning that they will not advance in their current legislative form. As a result, we're now tracking the House and Senate's proposed budget, leading to my joke that now they are in conference and going to figure it out. That being said, the House proposal focuses primarily on near-term operating funding stabilization for our localities' payments to WMATA. However, it only provides $153 million for WMATA operating across the 2-year budget period instead of $153 million in fiscal year 2027 and growing at 3% annually as identified through SJ 28. There's no additional funding for local transit, VRE, or WMATA capital identified in the House budget. Senate budget's the opposite, focusing on WMATA capital, some statewide transit assistance that includes our local transit agencies and some limited funding for VRE and WMATA through the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund. Really beating the allegations that the Senate and the House, don't get along, but that's okay. The Senate proposal relies on new revenues to the Commonwealth Transportation Fund in the region as a result of ending the sales and use tax exemption for data centers that was originally scheduled to expire by 2035. We've already heard about potential concerns with this revenue generation approach from our regional partners. Further, other than the very small statewide increases in transit funding, there's no additional funding for local transit, VRE, or WMATA operating identified in the Senate budget. There's more information about the specifics of each of these proposals in your written materials, including some language on other budget proposals, such as requirement for DRPT to assess the feasibility of consolidating Dash, Connector, ART, and Q into a unified regional bus system. NVTC will continue to track negotiations and provide updates as needed. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to our lobbyist in Richmond, Ms. Seibert, who for more details on the current state of play with everything and what we can do in the coming weeks to advocate for transit fund.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Amy Seibert with NVTC and VRE, and wanted to just give you, I think, honestly, Mr. Bierman hit all the highlights. We are currently at the place where we know now who the budget conferees will be. They were named last night. So the budgets were put officially into conference yesterday evening. And so the good news is that in the House, Delegate Paul Krizik, member of MBTC, has been appointed a budget conferee on the House side, which is great news, since we lost both Mark Sickles and Delegate David Bolivar to Northern Virginians. So we did get a Northern Virginian on there, which is excellent. And so Delegate Dolores McQuinn was also added in the House. She's from Richmond, but is a strong transit supporter, has worked with VTA and folks for a long time. And so that's also a helpful addition on the House conferees. On the Senate side, they did not add anybody new. So we do have no Northern Virginia senator on the Senate side, and what they did is they did switch out Senator Ryan McDougal, who's from the Hanover area, Richmond, kind of outside region of Richmond. They switched him out for Senator Stewart, who is from Spotsylvania, one of the sort of the PRTC area of the state, and he does have some VRE in his district. So that's what we're looking at. Met with a staff member today. There has been no budget conferees meeting yet. Hopefully that will start happening this weekend. I know that the staff has been working behind the scenes to really kind of, I think, get very familiar with what each other's budgets do. So a lot of that work has been happening behind the scenes. What we'll see, though, is that obviously there'll be small conference, out of those conferees, there'll be small conference committees that meet like on a topical area, and they get together and they negotiate on the different sections. They need to, resolve the resources question, which is how much money are we working with, to then work for the rest. And so that's kind of the big piece that they have to come up with. There is probably a bit between $1 billion and $1.5 billion difference between the two budgets. So they did things, as Mr. Bierman said, very differently. And so transit wasn't the only thing they did differently. So we are continuing to work with our partners, obviously VRE, WMATA, all the different jurisdictions and their legislative liaisons, as well as Hampton Roads, Richmond, and VTA on kind of continuing to push the same messages we've been pushing, which is transit is important, transit needs help statewide, and particularly in Northern Virginia. And so working on continuing to get operating funds, capital funds, as well as money for our local bus systems as well. So we don't have much more time left. Obviously, it always seems like it's an impossible goal to get this done by March 14th. But most of the time we do come to the finish line and we do get the budget done. We'll have to have the budget done by, it's 48 hours before they can vote on it. So it could be done by 3 p.m. on Thursday, and they could vote on it on Saturday at 3 p.m. So that's kind of what we're looking at from a time frame perspective. I know it seems short, but it happens. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, do commissioners have questions for, Ms. Perrin-Seibert? Very thorough report, apparently. Well done. I mean, I guess I just want to reiterate, and I know it was in Mr. Bierman's update, but neither budget meets our regional transportation needs. And I think that's the big, message that we want to emphasize in the 9 days left, the few days we have left, is exactly what this means for Northern Virginia and everybody who sits on this commission. And so we share your optimism that it will get worked out, through conference and over the next few days. But we are keenly aware of those operating needs and how urgent they are at the moment and how important they are. If Mr.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think we all know basically if we are depending on the state to come through, we have our regular operational needs, like we do every year. They're sort of in this weird extraordinary time where, they're looking at general fund. And then, of course, we have the capital needs that we talked about, and not just WMATA, but also local bus, VRE. And, we all know in this room that if the state doesn't do their part, we end up having to bear the burden locally. So I would hope that our legislators keep in mind, the importance of transit and make this top priority.
Agreed.
We had some robust discussion at the executive committee meeting. I don't think there's a need to go into too much detail. I will say that sitting in my inbox is that Maryland has stepped up. And if you told me 3 months or 6 months ago, 3 months ago, that Maryland would step forward and Virginia would not have done so yet, I would have been disappointed. So I don't think that's that's no reflection on our legislative work. We're frankly, I think, represented by the best we got, there is, but I just think we have to think about this, given the excitement we've had over DMV moves. They're, we're down to very few days, but we can reflect on the short term, but then I do think we have to finish the last 20%. We may run well for SJ 28 and DMV moves, but we're not done. And not done, it's a 1 or a 0. And so just thought of not to be too down. This is not the consequences of not doing the operating, as Ms. Coffey, you have said, are huge. And so we gotta think about this, and I'll ask ourselves if there's anything that we can strategically add value to Mr. Seibert's work, then we ought to ask that question of her and Kate, because just doing stuff to do stuff is not the same as making progress. So just thought I'd add those few thoughts.
So with that, I mean, please stay tuned. I know we just learned the conferees last night. We're still waiting, and just to put a finer point on it, we're waiting to find out who amongst those conferees will be sitting down on transit specifically. And I think at that point, there'll be a renewed effort from the lobbying team, likely from Kate and others. And if, you'd like to make a positive impact in how that, please stay in touch. But in the meantime, just continue to advocate. That $1.5 billion number is meaningful about what Northern Virginia Transit, provides the Commonwealth in terms of the economy. So we will stay tuned. Thank you for all your efforts so far, and best of luck to you in the days ahead. We look forward to the next update. With that, we're going to move forward to Kate Mattice with a TISDEC update and a federal update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as many of you know, we've spent the last year tracking potential changes to the state's allocation program under they call it the Merit Program for Operating and Capital Assistance. And this is for funding that goes to all of our local bus systems, and actually really the bus systems around the state. And so at the Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting on February 17th, CTB approved a revised timeline for board action, but it still is pretty quick. They are now expected to vote on any changes by October of this year. And those would be things that we put in place for when our localities are applying for grants next cycle. And so what it means is we're working very closely with the Service Delivery Advisory Committee and of course with DRPT to really fully evaluate impacts of changes to that allocation formula. And it's sort of happening in real time. We have the benefit of having the Deputy Director of DRPT here who is coordinating the TISDEC efforts. So I've asked him just to give a little tidbit about sort of what you guys see sort of playing out goals as we go through the process this year. So Alan, can I hand it over to you?
Yes, thank you, Kate. Great introduction. As Kate mentioned, we have a pretty short runway in which we have to get this figured out. The work we're doing now, I have a really good team down at DRPT working on this every day. We're trying to take a look back at what happened in 2025. For a new administration coming in, there's a lot of good work that actually got done up to now. I think we have a consensus on the TISDEC group on capital, some of the changes that were proposed there, and then some administrative changes. I think we have really good consensus on that. So in 2026, we're pivoting over to operating, and operating is where it gets a little bit trickier, a little bit more complicated. So the approach we're doing this year is basically we're taking a lot of what we learned last year, looking at the current formula, all the analysis that was done in the past, coming up with a little bit of a new approach. We put out some materials earlier this week. I know folks will be diving into it over the next few days, but kind of a fundamental shift. But I think it's a shift that makes a lot more sense for how this Commonwealth approaches the Merit Program. Right now, it's a little bit of a one size fits all. So we're comparing a very small agency and their performance and a very small rural agency that has 10 buses to Fairfax Connector. And it kind of doesn't make sense. We're kind of taking a little bit of a different approach. So we've put out some ideas to the group, and we're hoping to get some feedback from them. So that's just the first step. We have a couple different meetings left to go. One thing we did want to make sure we committed to was transparency and collaboration. We've heard a lot of feedback from how things went over the last year. So we're trying to make sure that as we move forward over these next several months, we have opportunities to present information to the TISDEC group, get their questions, get their feedback, and have a very, very iterative conversation. Still on a tight time frame, so it's going to be really heavy lift for a lot of folks, but we wanted to have that conversation back and forth. And in the middle of that, we're trying to look at what our options are for having some really coordinated outreach with across the industry, across Virginia, engaging in some of the different events that are out there, and then working with having some work sessions with some of our larger jurisdictions, our smaller jurisdictions, some of rural jurisdictions. So very transparent and collaborative is our goal going forward. Like I said, our next meeting is March 10th, which is next Tuesday. The meetings are out there, so we're looking forward to a good discussion. But one thing that's changed actually in real time as the General Assembly has been moving forward, House Bill 200 is looking at the TRIP program. That's the Transit Ridership Incentive Program. And the reason I bring it up is that TSDAC has been charged with helping us to develop some updated policies and guidelines for that program. I think probably everybody around the table has taken advantage of TRIP in one way, shape, or form. So there are some legislative changes out there. We need to put some guardrails around that, put some policy definitions and things. So when that kind of came through, we're like, oh wait, TSDAC, your workload basically just doubled. But we're on that same time frame of getting it to CTB and getting approval by October. So double the workload, twice as much stuff we need to work through. I think we've got great folks on TSDAC, great folks down at DRPT to get us through that and to really come up with some policies and some recommendations that are going to really be focus on the priorities of the administration going forward and making sure that we're ready to go administratively. So when that FY28 grant cycle opens up on December later this year, we're ready to go and folks kind of know what they're getting into. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Do any commissioners have questions on either program, Mr. Fall?
And if I could, just one of the things that we've really taken advantage of is DRP has provided us a timeline and a schedule of meetings. And so we're getting into a cadence of getting the materials, and then I've actually got a call with the jurisdictional staff who focus on these areas so that we provide the right input back in a timely manner to DRPT. I think that's a nice and refreshing change because that's obviously the most important thing is as I happen to sit as a representative on TSDAC, what I say is really representative of all of the localities and the bus systems here. And I think the DRPT has done a nice job of providing us a good heads up and timeline so that I can go out and get comments and provide them back to DRPT in a meaningful way. That's not something we were able to do too much last year. So we've already started that cadence. So the next TSDAC meeting is on Tuesday. And actually, I've already got a meeting on Thursday with all the jurisdictional staff to provide comments back by March 24th, because I know we need to keep this moving forward. So it's just some refreshing leadership and direction. And so I'm really thankful for the way they're going. If it's okay, Madam Chair, I'm going to just kind of transition a little bit over, just a little bit on the federal update. Even though it seems like a very long time ago, the Appropriations Act at the federal level that passed for all of the other agencies except for DHS on February 3rd does have funding moving forward for public transit. It's actually an increase over FY25 levels. It's basically aligned with the old infrastructure bill. It's just Congress is actually meeting what was in those bills. It's something I think we were worried about for a while. But I think the other thing that's wonderful to see, and this is really for our friends in Fairfax County, is there's a $100 million commitment from the FTA Capital Investment Grants Program for the Richmond Highway BRT project. That is huge. So they're going to be signing what they call a full funding grant agreement, and that is the first year funding. That is something that sits outside of FTA's trust fund. That is literally federal general funds. And so to get that in the dynamic that we have in Congress right now is really remarkable. So kudos to Fairfax County for getting that. And I'm looking forward to whenever the FFGA is signed to keep that moving forward. So that was a huge thing. Reauthorization of the federal programs is still happening. And so technically they expire September 30th. There's some things that are starting to come out right now. It'd be quite a miracle if they passed it in time. Usually they do an extension. And I know that Mr. Letourneau, who's not here tonight, is very involved in his day job. So he's actually been filling me in on some of the updates for that. So, Madam Chair, that is the conclusion of my report.
Any questions on either the federal update or TSDAC? Yes.
So I do a question. Yesterday, or the day before, you looked again at the size of Arlington's transportation bucket from the federal government, and I didn't know it was that. So I knew it was significant, but not quite that significant. And I just wonder if you, I mean, there are different perspectives. I've been operating under a, 12 of the 13 appropriations bills are right at the bills from last year. Do you have any insight as to, are you still anxious about big cuts in September? Or, the relative parity between this transportation bill and last transportation bill? Do you see that as any insights, keeping in mind that we all have federal insights, but
No, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball on that. I think though that seeing that Congress in passing the Appropriations Act for transportation, they met all of the funding levels is quite remarkable, because they didn't have to. I think the biggest risk, is the trust fund that the federal government has to pay highways and transit. It's called the Highway Trust Fund, but transit's up 20% of it. That has been funded through a number of different budget mechanisms. That's what made possible the infrastructure bill that we're currently under. Those mechanisms somewhat run out. So as they call it, the pay-fors need to be identified, and that will probably be the biggest debate. But again, I feel like I'm sort of going to channel Mr. Letourneau, that key leadership in the House and Senate are moving forward, perhaps more aggressively in funding transportation than perhaps the administration is. But time will tell sort of how that plays out. But pay-fors are not easy in a budget constraint or a fiscal constrained environment. But I'm definitely not an expert on it.
That's great. No, thanks.
All right, any other questions on this item, Mr. Swerve?
Hey, is that, what pool of money is that coming from, the 100 million? Because I'm just trying to figure out if that's something I'm already aware of, or it's a different pie.
So that's from the Federal Transit Administration, and it's a program called the Capital Investment Grants. And so it's a discretionary competitive program that actually the Silver Line Phase 1 was funded for the federal government through that. Not a lot of projects we have in this area have come through what they call the CIG program. It is for like metro, like subways, and for BRT. And so I know that the county's very aware of that award. Now, it's a promise, right? And so it's basically the first year funding. So definitely check back with your staff, but I know that they're aware of it. They sometimes call it the New Starts program. That's the old name of it. I just realized I should say the old name.
That translates for me. I didn't, the other thing was.
Yes.
That's what we've been counting, if you will.
It's been, CIG is the name for Bobby the last 10 years, but I always knew it as a New Starts program as well, so.
Thank you.
All right, definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. With that, we're going to move on to the chair of the Program Advisory Committee. We just have a quick verbal update on I-66 Commuter Choice Call for Projects. If you haven't had a chance, please read the written report from the chair of the Program Advisory Committee, which includes updates on the Envision Route 7 BRT project and the Zero Emission Bus Technical Assistance. I'm also going to turn it over to Commuter Choice Program Manager Daniel Nickelbein to give an update.
Thank you, Chair Bagley. So the I-66 Commuter Choice FY 27-28 application period closed on December 12th. We received 16 applications requesting just under 70 million in funding. And that was less than the 100 million in funding that we had available for new projects. In January, NVTC and DRPT staff undertook an eligibility review to ensure all applications for funding met the requirements of the I-66 MOA between NVTC and the Commonwealth, as well as commuter choice policy. As part of that review, we did determine that Fairfax County's Route 400X new limited stop service was ineligible for funding, as it did not demonstrate a sufficient nexus to the I-66 corridor to provide those required benefits to I-66 inside the Beltway toll payers. Additionally, I'll note that NVTC referred VRE's broad run lead track design application to the DRPT I-66 outside the Beltway program for their funding consideration, which allows for really a consolidated funding request for the full design process to be considered through the I-66 outside the Beltway program. So the remaining 14 applications have been scored in accordance with commuter choice evaluation criteria. And after we removed those Fairfax County and VRE applications from funding consideration, the requested commuter choice funding amount is 60.5 million. So that is less than 100 million available, and all unprogrammed funds will remain with NVTC and be carried over to the next I-66 funding cycle. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the public comment period opened yesterday and will close on April 3rd. More information is available on our website. After the public comment period closes, all comments and a staff recommended program of projects will be brought to our PAC for consideration at their April 16th meeting. In May, we will present a PAC endorsed program of projects to the commission for review, and a request for commission approval in June to transmit that final program of projects to DRPT for CTB approval and inclusion in their new 6-year improvement program. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have 100 million, 60 million is eligible. The rest gets saved. How can you describe the likelihood that the 60 million would be funded?
We anticipate bringing a staff recommended program to the PAC that includes all eligible applications.
Right, I didn't quite want to be, I just had to ask because it's exciting, so
Yeah.
thank you.
I'll just note the public comment period did open yesterday. So please encourage, any of you who have dogs in this fight, in your community to indicate support or ask questions about the proposed projects. And as a member of the PAC, I'll be waiting to get the approved projects or the recommended projects.
You
Yes,
actually have at your desk, and it's also in the materials as well as a list of all the projects.
Mr. Carantonis.
Just, first of all, thank you for the work, because I know that there's a lot of taking on and managing. Just as a general reminder that the commuter choice program has now, size-wise, the I-66 is very prolific in bringing funds to the table, and can be very substantial. So that's a food for thought also for the future now, because we can be as localities, now we know the capacity and the dynamics of the program, and that should be informing the way we plan for the projects that we want for this program to fund. So, that's to me the takeaway from now the second, third iteration of this. This is significant money, and it can do a lot of good for public transit out of the I-66 corridor. So thank you.
All right, thank you for the presentation. And we look forward to the recommendations. Moving on to item number 8. Tonight, we welcome VRE's new CEO, Katie Cho. She started in her new role at VRE on January 20th. There weren't any weather problems or other challenges to her short tenure. Katie Cho has over 25 years of program management and safety oversight leadership in the transportation sector, and she brings a wealth of experience closely aligned to VRE's mission. Most recently, Ms. Cho served as the Chief of Staff to the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, and prior to that, as Chief Engineer for the City of Boston Public Works and as a Program Manager at Massport, the Massachusetts Port Authority. In these roles, Ms. Cho delivered numerous major infrastructure projects with an emphasis on safety and quality. In 2022, she was also named WTS Boston's Woman of the Year. So without further ado, Katie, could you please give us your first VRE CEO report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It's been a bit of a tough month, so it was quite an introduction to Northern Virginia. Wanted to give a brief update on activities over the course of the last month. My main priority in coming into this role is to transition VRE from a commuter service to a full regional rail program. So that's really where my activities and my priorities have lie. The framework, this is laid out in System Plan 2050. So we're following a clear roadmap that's been adopted by the operating board. We're really looking though at the milestone that is right in front of us, which is 2030. That is only 4 years away. I was reminded today that it's actually only 42 board meetings away, so it's really coming up quite quickly. But in that period, we will be able to triple to quadruple the peak period reverse direction trains, double to triple our off-peak service, almost double the number of daily trains, increase our express service 4 times on the Fredericksburg line and 9 times on the Manassas line, and establish robust weekend service. So that's really the goal that we're going for in the next 4 years. In order to successfully meet these service goals in the short term, which is really where we are looking right now, we need to focus on 3 areas. That's ensuring our infrastructure and asset work is progressing on schedule. It is improving the reliability and quality of our service. This has been a rough month for that, and I'll go a little bit more into that. And then we need to grow our ridership. Once we are able to kind of keep the people that we have riding, we need to work on ridership. A lot of this comes down to communication and transparency with our riders and our stakeholders. So there will be a focus there. Moving on to today, our February ridership was at 160,975. Manassas line was 64,811 and Fredericksburg line was 96,164. I think it is important to note that we were up both from the previous month and from March of 2025. So our ridership is continuing to grow even as we experienced the snowstorms and the disruptions from the Long Bridge work window. On-time performance in February was also very good. We were at 87% in total, 92% on the Fitchburg line and 82% on the Manassas line. This is the first time we have been over 90% since 2022. So even with the challenges that we experienced in February, we were able to get over 90% on the Fitchburg line, which I have to admit, I'm not sure any of us expected. So that was a really great outcome. We did have the 2 snowstorms, or the snow and ice storm. Really the biggest challenge with that, besides being able to maintain the safety of our stations and ensure the safety of our crews as they were able to get back and forth to their reporting locations, was that Amtrak implemented new snow plans at Union Station that cut off or severely restricted our access to the coach yard. So we ended up not only needing to, normally we have a reduced schedule, our S schedule that we use during these snow events. We actually did not have the room to store even all the trains with a reduced schedule. So we actually had to come up with a reduced S schedule in order to take advantage of exclusively Seminary Yard. So I have to say, if we had not already had access to Seminary Yard, we would not have been able to run service for about a week after that first snowstorm. So it was a blessing that had already taken place. The good news is that we have had enough experience with the Long Bridge work window now that we have been able to mitigate and minimize the impacts from that. So while I can't say that there are no impacts, the Alexandria Shuffle, where we're taking people off of one train and splitting them into the 2 trains, 1 for each line, does take 6 to 7 minutes on most days, but we at least are at a point where it's predictable. Our riders understand how it works. We are there, we're staffing the stations well so that we're able to actually get it done as quickly as possible. We will take that time frame into account as we work our next schedules. We're also looking at potentially moving that shuffle to a later train where there are fewer people so that we can keep the dwell time there to a minimum. So while I had mentioned that our on-time performance in February was good, this month I will just give a statement now, will not be as good. March has had a very rough opening. There's a few things that are happening that are very unusual that are not related to weather. The first one is that we have had a failure of a part in our brake system that has happened now twice on 2 separate vehicles. We believe that it may be related to a defective part, but we are still chasing that down with the supplier. There is significant risk in this because we actually can't see the part. We cannot visually inspect it. It is in an area that we cannot get to without taking the entire brake system apart, and then at that point potentially causing some additional damage. So we are working with the suppliers to determine what happened there. those brake part failures, we had 2 about a week apart. And then those disabled trains caused cascading failures throughout the system. One of the things we have found with the work window is that we do not have a lot of resilience in our schedule because the trains were running the same number in a shorter period of time. So there's less time to be able to actually recover from any delays. And then unfortunately, after that second part failure, the next day, we had an additional mechanical failure. So in the morning, so we had another peak service failure, different issue, but still mechanical failure. And then later that day, and 24 hours later, we had 2 trespasser incidents, not related to us. We have no control over that. Was not our trains who were impacted, but it did again impact the schedule. So our riders were really, in the course of a week, put through a really tough string of delays. And so we have communicated with them. We have made sure that they understand the causes. We are doing our best to be able to mitigate that with them, mostly through communication. And I will be going out and doing some meet and greets, some chance to actually have a talk with people next week. Going to spend time at Alexandria Station and also time at L'Enfant, which should capture most of our riders in the evenings coming back down the system. And I have had this whispered that the second failure day may have been the worst day that many who have worked at VRE have experienced. So it was fairly significant. So I'm just acknowledging the fact that it's a bad day. We understand the impact that we had on our riders. It's something that we're learning from and trying to make sure it does not happen again. So with that, I am happy to take questions.
And I would add, and on a bit of a brighter spot though, at our last board meeting, we heard about some employees at VRE that really went above and beyond during the snowstorm. And I just wanted to take a moment here to acknowledge and then share that with all of you that this is a team of people that cares deeply. Several of them slept in their vehicles in Walmart parking lots because getting to the yard, getting to VRE and getting home was not going to happen given the conditions of the road. So it was pretty powerful. And I think it was Chris Henry who said he's been with the organization 20 years and he'd never seen impacts like this storm had. And yet, they're able to rally and keep service going. And it is an organization that I think takes these incidents, and these delays. They know the passengers, they know the clients. They've been seeing them every day for years. So I appreciate sort of the transparency here, and I think it's probably valuable to share that with the customers. But I wanted to just offer the flip side, which is we've seen some really strong responses, I think, by the staff in the last 6 weeks as well to these incidents. Any other questions?
I have questions. Thank you for the transparency up front. I want just to remind everybody that VRE is one of these organizations, operators that are governed by an incredibly strict, very successful safety philosophy. If a little things goes off in the VRE actually stops. That makes also the system more susceptible to cascading effects. We will see how serious or not, but for VRE, it's always a code red response. And this is very important to convey to our riders because one thing, we want them to be always safe, right? Sometimes they may be a little bit late, but they will be always safe. So that's an important part. So I'm sorry that this had to start like that. I know that you're doing the best diligence to get to the ground of that.
Any other questions for Ms. Cho? If not, we are going to move forward then. VRE Vice Chair Dan Stork has agreed to introduce the VRE action items at our meetings. I propose that after Mr. Stork presents the 5 VRE action items that we do one block vote at the end. Are there any objections to the block vote? All right, hearing none, I'll pass it over to VRE Vice Chair Dan Stork.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. And also I want to say that we welcome Ms. Choi to our first meeting a few weeks ago, and in particular wanted to thank Chair Bailey for her amazing work, hiring 2 additional folks, our CLO as well as our CEO, and huge lift that she made as part of that. And we are obviously very appreciative, supportive, and thankful for the quality of candidates and now hires that we've been able to do as a result of that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that it doesn't happen with a magic wand somehow or other. It
Be nice.
takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and again, we're very fortunate to have the quality and candidates and now hires that we have. So thank you. And I have a lot to read here, so let me just kind of use this and then be happy to, I think all of us on the board would be happy to answer questions along. For the first two actions, the question is being asked to ratify VRE grant applications. The submission deadlines were in February. Since neither commission had a February meeting, the applications were submitted by the deadline, but will be withdrawn if the actions are not approved. For action item 8B, we have resolution 2601, which will ratify VRE's application on behalf of the commissions to the USDOT's BUILD or Build Discretionary Grant Program for the VRE L'Enfant Station and Fourth Track Improvements Project. The federal grant amount requested in the grant application is $25 million. VRE staff identified the VRE L'Enfant Station and Fourth Track Improvements Project as a strong build grant candidate because it aligns with the multiple merit criteria, including environmental sustainability, quality of life, mobility, and community connectivity, economic competitiveness and opportunity, and partnership and collaboration. If authorized, the grant funding will be used for the construction phase of the project. For item 8C, we have resolution 2602, which will ratify VRE's application to the DRP for the FY 2027 I-66 outside the Beltway funding program, the design phase of the Broad Run lead track. This application is seeking 11.3 million in funding to support the final design and all necessary environmental reviews. VRE staff identified this project as the highest priority project for consideration for I-66 outside the Beltway funding. The lead track would be constructed parallel to the existing mainline railroad between the Broad Run station and maintenance and storage facility at a point west of Grant Avenue in the city of Manassas. And we heard a little bit about that earlier. The next item is for item 8D. We have resolution 2603, which will approve and authorize the VRE CEO to execute a capital funding addendum with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority or DRPT for the Alexandria King Street Station Pedestrian Tunnel Project. Capital project funding addendum is required by the master funding agreement for the VPRA supplied funding on VRE's projects between the commissions and VPRA in order for VRE to access VPRA's supplied funding. Now, if you got all those acronyms, you're doing. This capital project funding addendum will facilitate VPRA's providing up to 22 million in smart scale funds to VRE for this project. For items 8E, 8F, and 8G, these are grouped together as they are related. Resolution 2604 will approve a contract of purchase and sale with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority for the Broad Run corridor. Resolution 2605 will approve a contract of purchase and sale with VPRA's 4 station site permanent easements on the Manassas line. Resolution 2606 will approve the contract of purchase and sale with VPRA's for the Seminary Yard property. For context, the commission's previously approved a purchase and sale agreement in September 2025 for property interest from VPRA for $155 million. However, the process of getting FTA approvals of appraisals for these 4 property interests makes closing on all 4 property interests simultaneously infeasible. Instead, VRE and VPRA would like to move forward with the acquisition of these 4 property interests in separate contract and sale agreements to allow the parties to expeditiously close on each property interest as soon as VRE obtains all the necessary approvals from FTA, excuse me. VRE staff are bringing these actions directly to the commissions rather than through the operations board because both commissions are not meeting in April. The appraisal for the Broad Run corridor property is approaching its expiration date for purposes of FTA approval. The operations board members have been briefed on this situation but the amended agreements were not ready in time for Operations Board approval at their February meeting. After more recent conversations with FTA, VRE staff think there is a possibility that Seminary Yard may also get sufficient approvals to close prior to the commission's next meeting in May. Therefore, staff are also bringing the Seminary Yard PSA to the commissions for approval to enable the deal to close while the commissions are not meeting. We have VRE's General Counsel, Min Chao Kaur, here to provide more information.
Not yet, but.
I have more I'm not done.
Sorry.
So hopefully my voice holds out and you can hear me. I need to speak up. I have a loud voice. I can do that as well. So is everybody able to hear me so far? Okay, all right, great. All right, thank you. For the first two actions, the commission is being asked to ratify VRE's grant applications. The submission deadlines were in February. Oh, wait, sorry. That's the one I just read. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Yes.
So.
Do commissioners have any questions regarding these action items? I know the VRE members that are here are very familiar with these items and even greater depth, and we've had some closed meeting conversations were appropriate on these items. And as a result, then as proposed, we will do a block vote on the 6 VRE actions. The 6 actions I've just elaborated on, and then I guess I will go ahead and move those 6 resolutions.
Sure. And is there a second?
Second.
All right, so there was a motion and a second. I'll add, I know the reference, Mr. Stork mentioned, Min Chao, hasn't actually made it here yet. She's at PRTC. I think she did brief the board more fully, just so that everyone here knows on sort of what was going on with those purchase and sale agreements and why the updates. But, you know, the point I would just reiterate is nothing is changing about the cost or the funding sources. This is really more technical cleanup, just given the way that the appraisal timelines and the titles, things like that have played out. And I think if she were here, she would have said something along, I was gonna say I'm not a lawyer. I am actually. VRE's lawyer, so I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, I think if people do have other questions, we can certainly attempt to cover them. But yeah, this is good to wrap these up. You know, I think these agreements, and it's great that we already had access to the yard. That's come up many times already. The other thing I just wanted, before we vote and sort of move past VRE, is just, I did want to note something that I think Ms. Cho was trying out, which is, I don't know if y'all noticed, but she was here all night with us, rather than sort of running from PRTC. And so Dallas is actually at PRTC tonight, giving the update there. And when he returns to us, we do have plans to acknowledge the work he put in during these 6 months as interim. But I like this idea, if you have, feedback about it, but the idea not to steal.
No, I forgot to say it, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
But so, this idea was sort of broached that, rather than having them staff racing between the 2 meetings, which I never loved anyway, having them, race up and down 95. One staff member from her senior staff will either be here or will be there, and that will allow VRE to be at PRTC all night, to be at MBTC all night, and be able to hear and respond and be present. So I think it's a great idea. We'll see how it goes, but we're certainly glad to have you here tonight. So with that, Ms. Coffey.
Well, a quick question. I really appreciate that strategy. I've always found it quite quirky to be trying to be physically present at both, though admirable. Do you plan on kind of alternating or dividing and conquering?
The plan is to alternate.
Great.
Go ahead, Mr. Smart.
Just to thank you for that plan, for all these actions we support. Just adding the granularity with which you respond to the massive challenges of the last week gives some reassurance, and that's not to say that there's not a huge challenge that you face in the medium term of the next. Won't get the 42 meetings or whenever the federal funding runs, huge challenge. But give inspiration that you've got not only the extraordinary credentials from everything you did in Boston, but also here to help us meet this huge challenge. Thanks.
So before we vote, the one last thing I'll say is we didn't really touch on this much during the General Assembly and the transit funding conversation, but VRE also faces a very serious operating funding challenge. Their pandemic money runs out FY 28. It's been exceedingly well managed to get it that far, but we all need to be mindful of an operating funding solution as well for VRE at the General Assembly in the next year or two. With that, there's a motion and a second.
Nothing. I just wanted, first of all, that the term technical prenup is amazingly good. So that I will know. So second, because it is actually what it is. The second thing is that VRE's funding cliff comes at the point where VRE will have its cresting capital investment needs, which are absolutely critical for the performance of everything else that we are discussing here. And I'm only talking about this commission, the Northern Virginia part, right? Not to mention PRTC, so that's why we should be showing very stern support for these and asking a lot for what needs to happen this weekend, so.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Alcorn.
Can I put a finer point on that? My understanding after talking with Mark, I mean, basically each local jurisdiction is looking at probably at least probably a 3 times increase in jurisdictional subsidy without support.
Yes.
3 years.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the multiplier, but it's a multiplier.
Okay.
Not the job.
All right, so thank you for the discussion, I think, and all those points. All those in favor of the 6 action items resolutions? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Staying.
Thank you. With that, the motion passes. All 6 items are approved. Thank you, Ms. Hill. We will move on to Department of Rail and Public Transportation. As I mentioned earlier, DRPT Director Maria Zimmerman cannot be here tonight, but we do have Alan Fye here to give the report.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. The director's report is included in the materials that were sent tonight. A couple quick highlights from there. DRPT and MVTC actually both do a whole lot of data collection looking at ridership. There's a lot of really good information in there tracking some trends across the entire Commonwealth and across Northern Virginia, Metro VRE. We did see obviously some impacts last fall due to the government shutdown, but overall, when you look at the rest of the ridership trends, they're going in the right direction, they're heading in the right direction. I think we see that with some of the information the Metro puts out as well. Everything's trending in the direction we're hoping it would go. There's obviously several of your actions this evening were related to DRPT applications, which is why I abstained. For those, but the staff is deeply going through all those applications right now. And if they have any questions, they'll be reaching out to your staff for any follow-up. Right now, the schedule, as we're looking at it now, is to have a draft SIP published in April and looking for CTB approval for that in June. Over the last month or so, since I've joined DRPT and since the directors joined DRPT, we've had several opportunities to engage with folks in a couple different ways. I'll say this, day one of the job for me was a reception at DRPT, saw a lot of folks, reconnected with a lot of folks, and the VTA reception. I felt really, really excited that my first day on the job was really long, but really great. So we've really enjoyed reconnecting with folks in Northern Virginia and also with Director Zimmerman, who's lived up here in Northern Virginia for a while, is familiar, but relearning a lot of the different dynamics of Northern Virginia. So looking forward to that engagement. We had an opportunity to attend MVTC's legislative event as well. So looking forward to, like I said, the continued cooperation and collaboration going forward. Obviously don't need to say too much else about the General Assembly bills. We're tracking those as well. And there probably will be many opportunities for DRPT to work with all the jurisdictions and WTC. And on the note of people moving back and forth between commission meetings, Director Zimmerman is at PRTC tonight. I'm up here, and in May, we're going to swap. So you're going to have Director Zimmerman here, and I will be down at PRTC. So that is my update for the evening, Madam Chair. Any questions?
Wonderful. Do we have any questions for Deputy Director Fye? Did I get that title right? Deputy Director. All right, thank you so much. With that, we'll move over to Kate Tice's Executive Director report.
Madam Chair, as always, I'd love to point out our newsletter for this month, lots of great photos. First of all, I want to do a big thank you to all of you that came down to Richmond on a couple of different occasions. Because of the snow, we ended up having, it was supposed to be 2 different weeks, all ended up being in 1 week. So we both have highlights from the legislative activities associated with Virginia Transit Association. That Deputy Director just mentioned was VTA had a wonderful transit advocacy day on a Monday, and then later in that Thursday, we had our NBTC reception. And it was just fantastic, the ability to get so many of you there, as well as being able to work with a number of our legislators. So those are the highlights really within the newsletter of the things that are going on. Obviously, a chance to meet with a number of different legislators in that part of session. We do not have an April meeting, and we've heard that a couple times, but I always like saying that over and over again. We do not have an April commission meeting. But we do have committee meetings. So there's going to be a little bit of a break and a pause until April 16th. April 16th, we actually plan on having all of our subcommittees or our smaller committees meeting with a program advisory committee meeting at 4:30, followed by joint WMATA and legislative policy committee meeting at 6 o'clock. Both of those will be upstairs as we usually do. So our next commission meeting is May 7th. Right here, and of course, the executive committee upstairs. So that's important to sort of align that. We will give you a little bit of time and quiet, but I have a feeling we'll be reaching out to you with legislative things, especially over the next 2 weeks. Another thing that's included in our materials, as was mentioned earlier, is our communications and metrics report. And I want to highlight a couple of items. It really talks about our engagement October through December. And so we saw a pretty good uptick in media mentions, really covering both our open house for the Envision Route 7 that we had at Culmore Library. Obviously, a lot of the work in transit funding, we have become quite a research, even if it's just on background, to our friends in a number of different media outlets to make sure that they've got the story right. And of course, we had a lot of coverage for our joint legislative forum in December. So really exciting. Same sort of thing with our website. We're getting a lot of hits on our Route 7 and our legislative forum page. And of course, the NBTC homepage, a lot of folks go to find things there. It wasn't in my notes here, but always go and check out the data trends that we have going on. And I forgot to mention, we've also are highlighting in our newsletter every month is sort of a charting transit snapshot of transit trends and other data stories. So for this month, we've got it focused on the accessibility of bus stops to where folks live in Northern Virginia. So Sophie's done a wonderful job, and our data dashboard has great stories of transit there. As usual, we have our financial reports for both actually December and January included in your materials, and a couple of letters of support that we gave to endorse some projects. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. It was a busy time indeed. Any questions for Ms. Mattice about her report? All right, our agenda, I was asked for 8:30, it's 8:28. I actually want to take a point of privilege for 1 minute, and I want to tell, I just on a transit, yeah, I'll call everybody up at 8:30, but we spent a lot of time tonight and always talking about the value of transit. And I sit here tonight, having started my morning on the beach in Brighton, England. Wow. And I got to hear, without ever getting in a car, I took a bus from the boardwalk to the Brighton train station, where I got on a regional train that took me back to London, where I got on the underground that connected me to King's Cross station, where I picked up the Heathrow Express, another train that took me to Heathrow, where I flew. And then I got off at the Silver Line in Dulles that brought me straight here. And I tell that story because that's a tourism story, that's economic development story, it's all of those things. But the primary thing that struck me about the UK side of that is I never looked at a schedule. And that's what frequency does, is I just walked out to the bus stop because I'd just seen, flowing buses and figured one will come by, showed up at the train station, knew that the commuter trains ran every 30 minutes, one would show up. The underground runs every 3 minutes or something? Yeah. The Heathrow Express is every 15 minutes. So I did that whole journey this morning without ever checking a schedule, without buying tickets in advance. I just kept showing up. So I couldn't have done that trip without all those connective pieces. So I think that's what we're really talking about here when we talk about, transit and what it can do for jobs, for workforce, for students, but also just for tourism.
It's a political story though, because a British government wanted to privatize Thameslink that you took from Brighton to Victoria Station, and it almost bankrupted.
Well, we're gonna end with highlights. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.